All right, hey there guys, Sam here from TradeDevils.com, TradeDevils-indicators.com. Today, I guess we're going to call this a reintroduction of our footprint indicator. Now, we've had a product out in the market for many months now, but just recently, over the last 30 days, really, as we've continued to work on the Footprint Auto Trader, as we were developing that, we saw a lot of opportunities where we could enhance the footprint indicator as well, and we've now added so much to it that I think it's better to reintroduce this as though you were looking at it for the first time, rather than present this as the latest version. It is, in effect, a new version, but there's so much new, so much different. I figured we'd start here and kind of work from scratch. Now, I will say this. We have to have one video where we go through the parameters, where I kind of walk you through this. This will by far be the most tedious and boring video, right? And if you have a lot of experience with footprint charts, you probably get through some of this quickly, 1.5, 2 times the speed. But for those of you that are, this may be something new that you're bringing into your trading universe and your arsenal of tools, and thus there can be a lot of new concepts, new ideas, things that wouldn't necessarily be part of the vocabulary of a candlestick trader. So as a result of that, I am going to walk you through this. I'm trying to be as deliberate and focused as I can as we go through it, but there's a lot here, so we've got to at least have this one location here where you can come, and if you needed a little clarity, you could do that. Now, of course, in addition to that, let me just take you over to our website here. Let me go to the top of the page. You've got an online really, this web page is an online manual. It really is. So here, just over on the website here, Footprint Order Flow Indicator features, but then there's a lot of specificity here that you're going to bump into. If let's say, for example, you downloaded the trial and you were kind of working through the parameters, some of this may be new to you. You may not be familiar with, like, what is tick aggregation again, and how does this work, and continuous POCs. Now, some of this, once you see it once, you won't need to refer to it again. But some of it, particularly some of the delta signals, we're giving you so much control over what it shows you, and there are multiple ways that the indicator can show you the information. So we've got to go through that, so then you can, as you work with it, start to decide what is most important that you want to see on the chart, because you can show things 3 or 4 different ways here. You may like all of them. You may want just 1 or 2. It's really, you look here, a lot of different ways that we can represent certain technical events within the course of the day or course of a bar forming, and we're giving you so many different ways to look at it here. You really have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you set this up. So there's no one right way, wrong way. There's just a lot of flexibility here in terms of the amount of information that it can present to you, and then you deciding what's most important to you. But I want to encourage you to use this as kind of an online manual, and then this video will be that walkthrough, so maybe something will click in your head. It's like, oh, all right, now I get it. So if you'll bear with me here on this video here, we're just going to work through the parameters here. This will definitely be the most boring. But once we get through this, then we can start focusing on applications and some of the more interesting components of this. But let's do the parameters here first. So I'll just open it up here, so I'll pause for 1 sec. So here you see what I have on the chart. It's same as I typically do. I've got just a price line. Auto fibs I have hidden so as not to distract here. I should note here I'm running an RTH only, just for simplicity's sake, and not to distract from the indicator and be caught up in what's happening throughout the course of the day. I've got a 21 McGinley, which I typically will have on. I've got our initial balance indicator, which I always have on. Our toolbar, which I always have on. And since we're working with a range bar here, this 12 range bar, I put on the range counter. So both the price line and the range counter, that's just native Ninja tools. So you can see what we have here. Now, all we're going to do here, you can see there's a lot in here right now. Some of this is, we don't have to go through every single line of code here, but what we do have to do is just kind of work through the broad groupings of sections here. So again, there's a resource here. So I'm just going to start at the top, and we're going to work our way down, and then we'll look at it in application on the chart. Now, I should note here, I'm recording this on Monday the 19th. It's now about 2:20 New York time. I'm disconnected from data because I just find it too distracting. If we're My point being, let's just stay focused on what we have here, and then for further videos here, later videos here, we'll get reconnected here and look at some applications and maybe how it would interact with the auto trader and some of the more interesting components of this. But right now, let's just do the hard work here. Okay, so starting at the top. Many of these choices here are going to be available to you, and there's some redundancy here. We have, of course, all of the setup parameters here if you open up the indicator. In addition to what we're going to go through here, we also have a drop-down menu here, which is going to give you quick access to some of these tools, and that's a relatively new feature. I think we had that in the last version, but just for those of you that might be looking at our products here for the first time, this is an incredibly convenient way to do it. Rather than open it up, scroll down, try and find it. Where was that bit on volume sequencing? Oh yeah, okay. Well, here you've got click, 2 clicks, 2 seconds, you're done. So we'll circle back to that in a minute, but let's just stay focused here. Half the problem for me is staying on track. Okay, so we're going to start right at the top. So footprint style. Well, okay, right off the bat, what do we want to look at here? Well, most likely it's going to be bid ask. There are, I mean, you have a choice here, but bid ask would probably be a good starting point. And then the delta calculation here. This is there are certain places in the world where you can't get bid ask data. So, I think India is an example here. You can't get bid ask. You can only get up down tick. So with that, we've added that in there for those that might have that situation. For the vast majority of you, it'll just be bid ask here. The footprint style, now that's you have different choices here of how you want to look at it. Again, we'll get to that in a second. But just so you know, you've got those choices whether I want bid ask, table, or delta. Right? We'll start there, and then this again for the vast majority of you, it's just going to stay at bid ask. Now, right off the bat, we're getting into something here that would be significant here. This would be grouping of ticks or aggregating ticks. Now, why would you do that? Well, let's let me close this over here. I'm going to go over to let's go here. This is the first one here. So this would be an example of why you'd be doing that. So if you wanted to trade something slightly higher time frame here, I've gone to a 5-minute on the NQ, and you see, I mean, many people use this. There can be real value here in working with a footprint chart on a higher time frame. 5-minute being a good example. But now look at the chart here, and that's this is a 4K monitor as well. Even if I open this up, right, we get to where we can't. I can only get half of the candle in here, so you see the problem that you run into, right? Even if I reset here, there's so much information here, I can't really work with it. So the option that we're giving you is the capability to group the ticks, aggregate the ticks. So this is with a 5-tick aggregation here. So now all of a sudden I've got something more manageable that I can actually glean some information that might be useful to me here because of that grouping. So this, I would tell you, for something like the NASDAQ, anywhere from 5 to 10, probably a decent number. 5's a good starting point. 5 or 6 would be a good starting point with the NQ. There's a little bit of trial and error there. What you have to remember, though, is that if you're grouping ticks, everything goes up by 5. So if, for example, you were looking at a stacked imbalance where you might have three ticks in a row here, where if I was looking for that imbalance here, well, remember, it's not going to be 1 tick, it's going to be 5 ticks. So 1 becomes 5, 3 becomes 15. Now, so you need to have an awareness of it. Now, I don't know that you would necessarily react differently seeing a stacked imbalance thinking, oh, wait a minute, that's 15. I'm not sure I want that. That's going to be happening awfully fast. But I point it out just so you have an awareness of it, that it affects everything when you're aggregating ticks. And in something like a 5-minute on the NASDAQ, I think most people would come to the conclusion they really don't have a choice but to do it this way to get any meaningful information out of it. It's not like you lose anything doing it this way per se, but you just have to understand that if I'm looking for, whether it be volume sequencing or thin prints or stacked imbalances, everything is multiplied by, we've gone up 5 to 1. So 1 becomes 5, 3 becomes 15, etc. Okay, right? So hopefully that makes sense to you. There's no magic number. That 5 is not the right answer. Could be 5, could be 3, could be 10. Got to do a little bit of experimentation to see what works best for you. 5 is probably a good starting point. And then as we come back here, this is without any aggregation, just to remind you, that's just as is, right? Hard to work with. Okay, so let me come back to our ES chart here. Oh, let's see. Let's go to this one here where I think where we started, where I have everything enabled. Okay, back to parameters. So hang on a second. So picking up where we left off. So here now, as I'm back to a 12 range on the ES, I'm going to leave that as 0. I don't need it here in a 12 range on the ES, but just so you understand what that's there, what it's for, and when you would want to use it. Continuing on, short and big numbers. Well, if you were using something here where you had very high numbers here, maybe you're trading crypto or something where you wouldn't be able to see these here, where it might say 15,000 or 39,000, right? So again, depending on the time frame or what you're using, you might be trading a 15-minute. Lots of different ways you can do this, but all that's going to do is going to abbreviate the numbers. So it's going to shorten a big number, so it might say 39K. Let's see, I'm trying to see if I can find something here where I've got that. I don't have that here, anything big enough here in a 12 range. But if you saw that's just giving you the option to do it, right? If you want to see it try and squish the numbers in there, you leave it off. I think there's no reason not to do it here, but again, personal preference. Enable tick replay warning. Well, what all that's going to do, it'll come defaulted with that checked. What that's going to do is that if you loaded the chart, so maybe you brought up a 12 range or a 1 minute, if you forgot in the data source to enable tick replay, a big red warning is going to come up to remind you that for the footprint indicator to work correctly, you're going to need to enable tick replay. That's all that's doing. Okay, so now we get to some of the decisions that in earlier versions here you had to do it within the indicator. Now we can do it from the drop down, and that's okay. What do we want to see here? Bid ask, volume, delta, or diagonal delta. Okay, so we can make that choice here as well as what we want in the background of the chart. Do I want volume? Do I want delta? Or do I want a diagonal delta? I actually think the better way to show you that is with the drop down here. So let me do it that way, just so you see the benefit and the value of this. So looking at the chart over here, so this is where I just was within the parameters. So here's my first choice. Well, do I want to see volume in here? Right, it's all going to be on one side. I can see the volume. Some people like to use this to try and identify locations where you can expect support or resistance based on that very volume. Do I want delta? Do I want diagonal delta? Some people like this, particularly around decision points. Or do I want to just go back to bid ask right now? So I'm going to leave it at bid ask as I come down now to the next, which is the sell background. So as it is now, I have none. If I want to go over to the volume profile of the individual candle, we'll note here that's the sell background, right? Many prefer this, as you can see where there potentially might be a cluster of volume that can provide support. This might be an example here. That's one choice. Whether you want volume profile, you could, just as we were looking at it before, you could do delta here. You see it, right? You get a little of additional benefit here through that background. Or do I want the diagonal delta? Right, again, but it's just this personal preference. We're giving you those choices, how you represent it. Most commonly, this would be someone who has experience working with footprint charts that knows how to read that quickly, and they're doing that to get more insight into how the market's moving intra-bar. I think for our purposes here, just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to leave this just as the most basic form, which would be table and then nothing in the background here. So bid ask and then none. Now, just because I think that's an easier way to show it to you to do it here. This is why we did the drop down. But because I've got to get you through all the parameters here, let's go back into the opening up the indicator. So this is what we were just looking at up here in the drop down. Bid ask, right? And then the sell background, right now. So bid ask none is what we just set up here. Text font. Again, this is just personal preference. You might like it bigger, you might like it a different color. Again, this is a 4K monitor. Maybe yours you need something different. This seems to work pretty well, but those are tiny, right? So if you want it bigger, well, it's pretty easy to change it. bold, italic, size. It's just basic stuff there. It's all just color choices here in terms of what you want. Now you might want to change the bid ask background. You may not like the colors that we had, right? So, but we're just, I'm going through the default. You can tweak this as you like. Showing the last tick, well, as we just looked at the example on the website, it's just going to highlight where the last trade was, and we put it in this yellow gold here, so it's quick to your eye to spot it. Now, bar statistics. This is a new feature that we've just added. So we're giving you graphic symbols here to identify a technical event. Might be a delta event, might be something like a stacked imbalance. It might be volume sequencing, might be an exhaustion print. So understand that you have a combination here of delta signals with other footprint type of events that might be noteworthy here. So for example, a delta divergence might be something you want to see, but a delta divergence is a delta signal. An inverse imbalance is not. Well, I suppose you could make a case here that it would be, but something like a stacked imbalance here, right? So that's an easy one. So if we see a stacked imbalance, it's going to identify it with this little triangle, sideways triangle, I guess, how we describe these hieroglyphics. But you've got it almost looks like a play button. A reversal imbalance and an inverse imbalance. These little markers here, and this is okay at first if you spot this, right? So that's volume sequencing. That little square, I can look at that and come, where's my little square? Oh, okay, I've got volume sequencing. So you'll note here that that's not a delta event. So we're not going to get a signal down here under delta signals. But I am going to get that little square to tell me here, in addition to the fact that it's noted here in the chart. So let's be clear on what volume sequencing is, right? Just in first, so just as a reminder here, I'm just back over on the website here. We're just halfway down the page, well, maybe a third way down the page. Well, here's volume sequencing. Okay, all right, so we get a visual representation, the rules to define what it would mean. 5 or more price levels increasing on the ask for the bullish, or on the bid for bearish. I mean, it's kind of straightforward concept, but if you hadn't seen it before, well, whoa, what's volume sequencing? So if we come back to our example here, well, there's a lot of on the buy side here. So you see all these blues, and every time you see that little square down there, we know. Well, if you weren't sure, like, oh, do I have it? Well, let me give you an example of where you might be using that more specifically. So for any reason, perhaps you have the volume sequencing turned off, and you don't want to see it here in the actual table of the candle, and you just want the hieroglyphics. Well, okay, right, with a little bit of time and experience, that may be a choice that you make, where you say, okay, I don't want that blue in there, it's mixing in with other things, or I can't tell, for whatever reason. If you didn't want to see that there, well, then the little graphic there is going to confirm that for you if you weren't sure, because sometimes you might look at this and go, okay, wait a minute, does it go up 5 in a row? Oh, okay, well, and by that time, maybe the trade is gone. So it's a quick identification. What's there? How do I want it represented? Do I want it on the candle? Do I want the graphic? How do I want it? Do I want a stripe? Lots of different choices for you. But let's just be sure that we're clear on what these things are. So that's the point of this particular video. So let me open it back up again. I think by default these are all turned on. You could turn them off here. You could turn them off in the drop down if you didn't want them. Again, this is just personal preference. That's really all we're telling you is if you want to do it this way, you can do it this way. Choices. Right? That's what we're giving you. Right, so I don't see any reason to not, and it might just speed things up. You might recognize some with a little bit of time. You'll get to where you recognize them just visually. Okay, now show delta reversal markers, these kind of things. Where do you want to see these? So the delta signals here that we're looking at here, this is a function of what we're going to see on the bar. So the show delta, the bar statistic, excuse me. So right now, what this is referencing to is what's on the chart, not in the summary, what's above the candle. So you note here I have 3 of them highlighted here. I have potential to have many more. But right now I just have the delta, I have the volume, and the delta percentage. Well, maybe some of these are a little bit darker. But I can see volume, I can see the delta percentage, the delta percentage, I can see the actual delta, but I've also got it down here. Now, there's a good example where you may decide, like, oh, on the bar is fine, I don't need it down here. Or down below is fine, I don't need it up here. Just personal preference, whatever you like. So you can put all of these on the chart above. You can get rid of this entirely, or you can do vice versa, right? Just get rid of everything on the chart and have everything down below. Just more flexibility for you. Open and close above the POC. This is color coding here for that. Again, that's not a delta signal, but where is the market opening? If it's, you're going to get this little triangle here. Those, you see this little green triangle and this red triangle. Those are, I think calling it a buy signal might be the wrong way to describe that. I would call it a bullish bias out of that candle, because we open and close above the POC. But now immediately you get 2 bars later, as we come up and tag that 21 or the 21 McGinley. Well, now you get it down here, right? So we're opening and closing below the POC in that candle. So this would probably be the most common signal, that and delta divergence. Those little triangles, it's kind of a bias rather than a signal per se, but interpret it as you will, just so you understand what it's doing above, below the POC. That's what those little triangles are. Oh, then the marker font, right? This is just color coding and size. This is very typical stuff. This is color changes if you wanted to make color choices. So for example, here in the delta percentage, it's kind of a faded here with this black background. It's kind of a faded. I can see the -6.4. I can see it here. The delta percentage here, you'll note here, I do not have in the summary. I just have it above the candle here. There's no right, wrong, just personal preference. You can, and if you have a little bit of code knowledge here, you can change these. It's really pretty straightforward here. If you want text color to be something other than white, well, you just type that in. But so I'm going to encourage you to maybe not fuss with this until you're absolutely clear on what you're doing. The default probably be a good starting point. Okay, so with that, let me see if I guess I can't close that up. All right, but we've got kind of the first chunk of this. So now let's go down, and this is, as we go into this next section here, best way to, I don't know what's the best way to show this to you. Okay, this is within the bar. These are color coding and choices you have with regards to how you want things represented in the bar. So POC, what do I want the text here? Right, that's pretty straightforward. And much of this, I know, sorry guys, I got to go through this. Much of this will just be self-explanatory. Oh, the POC outline. Oh, okay, well, I want that color. That's pretty straightforward. Again, this is kind of color choices here. I don't know that this warrants a lot of time here, but just so you know it's there. Oh, in the POC of a bullish candle, I don't want to change that to a green. Okay, well, have at it, right? That's the idea here. This is just kind of your personal preference, how you like to see things, what you want to see. So here, for example, the multiple POCs, that's a potential event that you can highlight here. That's a good way to do it. Bar value area. Do I want to actually see the value area of the candle? You may not, right? That's show it, not show it, right? That's just a check mark away, and I think we have that in the drop-down menu as well. You can extend it if you wanted to see that. If you wanted the value area to extend, you have that option to extend it for X number of bars. Base bar colors, okay, candle color, as in up, down, close, right? Do you want those colors? If you want to change them, you can. What the value area color coding is going to be, again, this is all just color preferences here. We're not going to spend a lot of time here. Same thing here. Now you might look at this and go zero prints. Okay, what's a zero print again? Well, again, I'm going to take you back here to, you've got, can I find zero prints here? Yep. So here's zero prints, right? So we see zero. So if something were moving really quickly here, you see zero prints in the midst of that. Well, here we've got one at the bottom. Here's a better example here. It would be more commonly, you'd find it in the midst of a candle where there was a sharp move and there was an imbalance. There was just nothing on the other side of the trade. So that's a choice. Do you want to highlight them? So you see it here. It's literally being highlighted on the zero prints. Here we're intra-candle. Right, here's an example of what I was describing, where the market's moving quickly here. There's nothing on that side of the market. Let's see, we have kind of some rules for it here in terms of how it's going to be identified. But much like the thin prints or the exhaustion prints, you've got this online manual here to refer back to. Come back here to where we were with zero prints. Do you want to see them or not, and what colors? Thin prints, same idea, and you've got that same reference in terms of a thin print where we might see something. Do I want that accented and highlighted? Might be a tell of sorts. Do you want to show delta divergence? Now that's going to be a delta event. That's a signal that you have that will show both down here in our delta signals. Do you want to show that divergence? Well, first let's recognize that not everyone may understand what a delta divergence is. So let's where's my delta? Here we go. Delta divergence here. Okay, so here's a delta divergence signal right here, right? So you're going to get this nice green dot here, and you're going to get a D in your delta signals here to tell you that in this particular case, as would be, I get a new low here, but then I get a positive delta and an up candle here. So I've got delta divergence, D. Green dot happens to be that there's some volume sequencing as well, and then here I've got, what do I got here? I've got the volume is shortened here. So I've got a kind of a combination here of events. So do you see here how many ways we're showing it to you? So there's volume sequencing here in the candle. There's the square to reference the volume sequencing. Here's delta divergence represented by the green dot as well as the D. Now you might say, okay, if I've got the D, I don't need the green dot. Or if I've got the green dot, I don't need the D. It's up to you as to what you want to show there. I'm just kind of re-emphasizing that not only do you have the choice, multiple ways to represent it, but if you don't remember, what's a delta flip again? What is that again? Here, you got it right here. Right, and you'll get an F here for a delta flip. Delta flip's one I look for all the time. Right, it's a good one. Okay, so just a reminder. Hey, what's a delta tail? Well, there it is, right there. You've got those references here. So as we come back here, okay, thin prints, zero prints, delta divergence. Here's that big divergence marker, right? Big red and green markers there. Oh, see, I don't have one here. Oh, I thought I did. Exhaustion prints, do I want to see them or not? Right? I don't see any reason why you wouldn't necessarily want to be drawn to those, right? An exhaustion print, potentially a market literally exhausting, perhaps before going back the other direction. I would suggest you leave these on and then remove them selectively based on your experience of working with it. I suppose you could do the exact opposite. Turn everything off and then turn them on one at a time and get used to each of them individually. Right? There's no right way to do it. It's just a process of working with it and then getting clarity in your mind. Okay, what are these events and how many different ways do I need to see it? Right, personal preference. Oh, here's the volume sequencing and the color coding here for up and down. We've had a lot of the blue here that you see, but there's also this magenta here if we have volume sequencing coming down. Imbalances here, well, do we want to show them? I would suggest you leave that on. Big imbalances, you're going to get a bigger notification there of a big imbalance here being 1300. So right now we have, and this would be the default, couple of things to show here. So number one, do we want to see the imbalance? Do we want big imbalances emphasized? Yes, would be my suggestion. And do we want to see a second slot imbalance? Oh, I don't think I have one here, but it's not that uncommon. Where you'd have an imbalance, but you're not right at the low. So it's a little bit more of a heads up that you might get a flip before the auction finishes. So you might have an imbalance at that second slot rather than at the absolute low. So these are just choices as to whether or not you want to turn them on, and then the percentage that you want to be notified of an imbalance of that level. So default will be 400. That's a good starting point, but tweak to your heart's content. Minimum imbalance, well, you got to have something in here, so we'll put it at 1. An oversized imbalance percent would be 1,000. Big imbalance level, now you're going to get a great big dot that will show you a big imbalance. And then the minimum multiple imbalance count, right? So we have a 3 being as our set for a stacked imbalance. By imbalance text colors. Again, just color choices. So again, this is all just color choices here for second slot, big imbalance with multiple sells and buys here. And well, let's see if I can get. When we go through the chart here, we'll see them. Do I want to see a big? Do I want to have a big trade filter? That would be more of a specialized event here, to where you were specifically. So you might have that on a separate candlestick, or pardon me, footprint chart, where you would have something identified for these very large prints. Again, people will often use those as potential support and resistance just to draw your attention to it. Can be a bit too much on a chart like this. We have so much going on in this chart. If you add that in as well, can be too much, right? So I leave that to the individual. This is default comes off. If you turn it on, okay, well, you're going to lose a lot of the numbers here. So if you used a minimum trade of 500, well, anything without a 500 is not going to register. So it's a specialized event that you might use in conjunction with having multiple charts open. Stacked imbalances, we just looked at that. And so what's a stacked imbalance? Let's see if I can find one here. Okay, here I had to switch to a 15 range so I could spot one for you. So here's a stacked imbalance right here. So you'll note the little red, I'm going to call that a sideways triangle or a play button here, identifying that I have a stacked imbalance. And the stacked imbalance, let's see if it'll let me do that right here. Right, so you see three prices in a row where we have an imbalance. So imbalance, imbalance, imbalance. So thus a stacked imbalance, and it highlights it. Now it's mitigated on this next wick up, but had we just fallen down here, that would have drawn across the chart. So you would identify, hey, now of course this is, we're right minutes within the seconds within the open actually. And then as we progress throughout the day here on a 15 range, surprisingly there are not that many. Well, they really stand out. So that's the kind of thing that you might want to have your eye drawn to when they happen. It's a true sign of momentum. So we have imbalances here. So note here in this candle, which is why it gets a red outline, all of the imbalances that are highlighted here in red. But there's not three of them stacked on top of each other. So it's kind of interesting. It's more common than we're seeing today. I got just about everything but stacked imbalances. So here's sequencing coming down. There's volume sequencing. So here's we were looking for that before. There's volume sequencing on the down, right? 27, 48, 49, 75, 110, 213, volume sequencing coming down. Thus the magenta little square here. Here's a stacked imbalance. Here's a delta divergence. We can kind of go back and we'll see some of these. So here's sequencing with the stacked imbalance. Here's the triangle with, so we have the triangle telling us that we open and close below the POC, so thus the bias is down. Here I've got sequencing as well as delta divergence. I get a fresh low, but we open and we close above the POC, and we get an up bar here. So I've got delta divergence here. I go right into this where I get the reverse. I got a red triangle here. So that's why I tell you these are not, I wouldn't think of these as signals, more of a short-term bias rather than, so here's on the upside. That's probably the most common that you'll see is the hollowed out triangle here, right? And then if you see it in conjunction here, so here I've got a trio of things. I've got volume sequencing. I've got an inverse delta print here. Oh God, nice. Sometimes, right? I gotta check on them here. So I've got a square, a triangle. So I know the square is volume sequencing. The triangle here is an exhaustion print. That's this right here. If I can highlight that. So there's the exhaustion print. Let me do it. It's that 7 right there. It won't let me go over to the angle. But right there, that 7 is the exhaustion print, and then volume sequencing. So open and close above the POC, green candle, sequencing, exhaustion print, all on that candle. Okay, well, did we get a nice move out of it? Yeah, you did. I mean, that's a scalp of sorts. If you were firing that on the bar's close, well, it's 28 ticks. Right, let's not assume you're going to get all of it, right? Maybe you got 20, 18 ticks out of it there before you get, all of a sudden, right, we get double top here and then lower high, and now we start to come down. All right, always easy after the fact, isn't it? But if you're sitting right here, what are you thinking right there? Well, still, you're in the first 15 minutes of the day here. Nothing really that you can deduce other than we filled the gap. Right now we're just coming back up here, double top. All right, well, we know it's been a down day since then, but just kind of giving you some more examples. And then here's a few things that we've talked about. So here you see continuous POCs. It's highlighted to draw your attention to it. Was that significant here? If we kind of do this and draw that over, maybe something you'd want to pay attention to. Then I've got here's that sequence again. So I've got delta divergence, I've got volume sequencing here, and I have an exhaustion print, right? So here I've got trapped traders down here. You can see them, they're trapped, they're stuck down here. This is what you want to look for, right? They've come down here. If it starts to push away, these guys here trapped at the lows, they got a cover, right? That often is the fuel to take it up. Okay, so let me go back into the parameters here so we can finish up with that. So hang on. So picking up where we left off, here's our stacked imbalances with a cluster of 3 show. Well, you have that choice, right? I don't know why you wouldn't want to show them. Right? It's kind of an event to be notified of here. So 3 in a row. We'll go ahead and note that. It will come defaulted to show it and to extend until tested. You can change that. If you want to extend the bar count, you can. This is just color choices for what you want to see for the stacked imbalances. It's kind of handy to have them drawn across. Just color choices. Show imbalance reversal. Again, that will default to yes if you're not sure what that is, right? Again, you can just, so inverse is what we're looking at here. So essentially what you have here is trapped traders. So these imbalances means traders went long or short trying to trade a breakout, right? These are the breakout traders here. That's why you really want to look for that, because that's often the fuel, because the true stat is, in my mind, 90% of breakouts fail, right? It's how retail gets taken advantage of. So here we have the people going after a breakout here. You can see them identified. The market goes away from them. They've got a cover, and that can be the fuel for a move. So I would definitely encourage you to have inverse imbalances identified. When I see it, it's just, to me, it's trap traders. So that's one of the most significant events that I look for, because I know they got a cover, right? So they're going to help push that up. But just, again, a resource for you to refer to. Let's go back to where we left off. So inverse imbalances right here. Yes, we want to show those. Yes, we want those to be highlighted. Color choices, make them brighter if you want to. But that's a key event you want to look for. Market sweeps, again, you've got that resource on the website where you see an imbalance where the market's moving so fast, right? On bid or ask, right? There's no time for a trader to be on the other side, or algo to be on the other side. The market's moving so fast, so you get a sweep. Not necessarily always, if you see a sweep, to immediately jump in and go that direction. Often it's a liquidity grab. So approach with caution until you're more familiar with what they look like and what follows them. But I would encourage you to leave that on so you can identify them. And then here, if you wanted to focus in on exactly what those look like, you can change the colors to your liking. Unfinished business. Well, we want to show that because that's just going to show an unfinished auction. Those tend to be location magnets that as the market goes through the auction process. An unfinished auction is often a location where there'll be unfilled orders in the auction process, the market looking to create liquidity and move towards liquidity. An unfinished auction is a liquidity event, so often you'll find that the market will move back to it to finish up that business before carrying on. Not always, it's not a hard rule, but it's something to look for. So I would encourage you to keep that on. It'll just draw those little dashed lines across the top of the chart so you know what it is. Let's see, let's make sure you've got a reference for that. Here's some examples of some unfinished business up here. So you see, now typically at a finished auction here, you'll see a 0 on one side. If we don't have a 0, we have an unfinished auction, right? So that can be a magnet to the market. You see it again here. These are all just fine. We've got a 0. Right? I don't have it here. Here I have a 0 here. I have unfinished, unfinished. Right, so I'm finished down here. I'm okay here. Now here, where I sell off, likely there's unfilled orders up here. So it's just, again, it's to draw your attention to something. Hey, that may be an area the market returns to. So it may be the type of thing. If you had a target or a stop that was too close or sitting right at that, you might move it accordingly, because that's likely a place the market will eventually, if not in this session, eventually will return to clean up that auction. So we mark them for you with that thin line here so you know where they're happening. Let's see if I come. Here's another one here. You see this, right? So that line telling you, hey, I've got an unfinished auction up here. I mean, that's pretty dramatic. That we didn't finish there. Oh, everything else, right? You see a 0 on it. Well, here's that line coming all the way across still, right, as we came up to get it here, and this is where I disconnected from data. So that remains. Here's another one. This is on the buy side here, unfinished. Right? So we see these are just areas to be noted on the chart. Don't forget what they are, right? Because that can be an area the market returns to. All right, so we got that one. So let me go back to our parameters. We're almost done. Okay, last section here. Here's where we left off at unfinished business. Yes, we do want to show those. Now currently it's only with a width of 1. You see how thin they are. If you wanted to change that, you might feel, yeah, no, I need those a little bit fatter here, so I know, hey, if I've got unfinished business here, I want a little more emphasis on that. So that's another option for you if you want to fatten those up a little bit. They could be a little thin for some. I think we used to have a default of 3 or 4. For some reason we're now default at 1. So tweak that if you prefer it. Okay, now we come down to the footprint summary. So you've got a lot of choices here in terms of what you want to see. So just to give you an idea of what all of these choices are available to you in terms of what you could put in the summary. Some of you may want all of them. Some of them you may want none of them. This is really just personal preference, what you want to see down here. And remember, you have the capability to put things underneath or on the candle, or above the candle, I should say. So a lot of people will do a combination. Maybe they'll have 1 or 2 down here, they have their delta signals down here, maybe volume, they may have delta percentage. That you could have cumulative delta, right? I mean, cumulative delta volume. You could have the actual volume. I mean, there's a lot of options for you down here in terms of what you see. Again, there's no right, wrong. This is just one of the ways. This is a common one that you'll see here, where we're putting emphasis on those things that will matter most, right? The delta signals, of course, I do want to see those. The delta, the min, the max delta is that you see here. These will get highlighted if there's something of significance here, where I've got a minimum delta of 1 here, and then I've got a big delta, a push up higher on that, but we end up with a negative candle, right? So you might draw your attention to that. Oh, so this is there again. There's no right, wrong. It's just what do you get value from, and then some of this is all just the colors that you choose down here. Again, this is with a little bit of just a very minor bit of code knowledge here of C# here. You should be able to deduce what you're doing there. If not, leave it alone and just work with those colors. Now, delta bars here, this is a choice you have as to whether or not you want to see the bar. So let me give you an example here. So here, you're just anything above the delta signals line, you're getting a visual representation of the delta in that candle. Or if I go over here, now I have it turned off. Some people don't want to see it. They just want this down here. Or maybe you've got something underneath this. You might have volume or cum delta or whatever you'd like to see underneath the chart, so you're not taking up so much real estate underneath. That's another option. And then you could indeed keep this minimized and then put what's important to you above or below the chart. So we're giving you just more flexibility here. Some people like to see this, so you get that visual representation here where we see a big push here in delta, kind of quiet, and then a big push down. It's just visual representation. Some people like it, some people don't. It's just giving you that choice. And then you also have the additional option here to put content within that delta bar. So let me get that back up for you. So here I have the choice of whether or not I actually want to see them at all. And then do I want a certain height? I don't want them so high that they're interfering with the actual chart. So anywhere from 10 to 25 probably okay. 15, so you get some reference of relative increase or decrease. And then I have the choice. I could additionally show what's above the candle here, the delta percentage, the delta, and the volume that I have up here. I could put those in the delta bars themselves. Well, here, let me show you. So if I wanted to do this, I didn't want them on the candles. Give that a second to load. Then I could put them in the bars, which you'll see in a second. So now you see them here, right? So now, so you look at it here, you might think, oh, wait a minute. Let's cancel that. Wait a minute. That's a lot of information. Do I need it? Do I need all of that? Do I want it on the chart? Well, some people might, right? They might say, okay, well, I look up here and I look down here. Okay, do I want to do all that? I like to get, my key things I'm really following on the chart, right? Where I'm looking, I can see it. Down here is kind of a confirmation. And of course, I'm looking for those delta signals. Again, this is all just personal preference. What do you like to see? And where do you want to see it? That's ultimately what we get down here. We're giving you all the information. It's where do you want to see it, how do you want to see it, and what's important to you. Okay, I think we're just about done here. We left off here showing the delta bars. Do I want to see these 3 key pieces in the bar, right? Do I want to see them? They are literally in the bar. Color choices, the stripes. Now the stripes, some people like them, some people don't. Again, it's just personal preference. Do you want them there? Maybe anything that's going to fire a delta signal, you don't want it, but anything that's not, you want a stripe. Flexibility. Then we're giving you some customization here. If you have something, a particular color that you wanted to have, you've got that choice. You've got all of the alerts, right? So any of these events can fire an alert. You do have a volume profile here that we've included this, so you get I mean, a functioning volume profile here for the day here. We put it on the left here, so that's, but you could put it on the right if you prefer. So just letting you know that we give you a volume profile with this indicator. Kind of a nice touch. Color choices, up to you. Do you want to paint the bars? The default will come yes. It's up to the individual. Footprint bars, I mean, you have the choice to actually put it on only the last bar. If you only wanted to see the footprint of the last candle, you have that option. Some people might like that. They might want to trade a candlestick, and then they get to the decision point to that bar, then they want a footprint candle to show up. I've never done that, but it's an option for you. Current bar only. And then I think the rest of this is all just related to color choices. So this is likely an area you wouldn't need to touch. The rest of this is just basic Ninja stuff. Do you want it visible or not? So I think that gives us a good reference here. It's probably tedious as hell to get through it, but at least now we have one reference. I think more than this video, you're likely going to use the web page, because that's what I use. If I'm lost on something or can't find it, I do like, oh, okay, I know where that is. So lots here, and just I remind you that you don't need to, once you get it set to where you like it, it's much quicker to go up here and say, okay, show me this, don't show me that. What do I want? Do I want to see these bar stats? Do I want all of them on? Maybe I just want to focus on volume sequencing, so I turn everything else off. Do I want to show the last traded tick? Yeah, probably do. Do I want to shorten big numbers? Yeah, probably do. Do I want zero prints to show? Yeah, probably do. Do I want thin prints? Yeah, probably do. Volume sequencing? Definitely. You see it just came on. What here? Look down here. So I turn on. Now I've got volume sequencing here, right? Up and down. Do I want it? Big imbalances. Do I want to show it? Well, let's see if I got anything popped up there. Well, I don't see I've got one. Second slots. Yeah, probably want to see that. Show big trades, right? That's gonna emphasize. You may or may not want that, but that's going to emphasize those 500 plus, and you can set that to whatever you'd like. Maybe you only want to see. Right, look at the difference, right? So I go to 500, and this is people like to trade with this. So I might, in this case, I might turn the stripes off, right, just so that I've got something more I can work with. So I turn the stripes off, but what I want you to see here is where the big prints are. If I were doing this, I would likely be doing it on a separate chart. So I'd have just the standard footprint, and then I might have this over on a different chart with all the stripes taken off. I may or may not want the summary on the bottom. So I can just see those locations, and you know, is it a factor? Is it? Well, here's buying here, right? I mean, are they coming back here to fill orders? Is this just a failed breakout? Well, here's the initial balance here. They're trying to tap the initial balance high. They can't get. Oh, pardon me. That's the initial balance low, right? They're trying to get back into the initial balance. They can't get in, right? Tell you every single day, and it's amazing to me how few people know this. The two most important levels on the board every single day: IB high, IB low. I'd add VWAP in there, but if I could only choose to have two levels on the chart, it would be the IB high and the IB low. Amazingly, very few people incorporate that into their trading. I would tell you that's a mistake. You want to have an awareness of it. If you don't have an initial balance indicator, well, you don't have to use ours. I mean, you can mark it yourself. Put a line on the chart. It's kind of a pain to do it, but do it. You need to know where it is. I promise you'll thank me if you're not using it. Okay, I think I got everything there covered in this video here. A little tedious. I apologize for that, but so we do have this one reference. Hopefully I didn't lose everybody or bore everybody to death. The best place by far is going to be to come back here. If you're lost on something, wait a second. What's a delta drop again? What does that zero mean again? Oh, 4 consecutive bars with decreasing delta. Okay, O for drop. Okay, got it. Surge. What's the delta surge? Oh, well, it's the opposite of that. So it would be 4 consecutive bars with increasing. So then I'd have a delta surge. Where are you, delta surge? Delta surge. 4 consecutive bars with increasing delta. I'm going to get a big S that says surge. I got D. So here I've got D for divergence. So look what I get down here. I've got D for divergence. I get here. Now, I don't get a signal telling me I've got sequencing, but that little square and the blue tells me I've got sequencing here. I don't get a stacked imbalance, but I get imbalances. I get multiple imbalances, which creates the green outline on that candle. Up we go. Right? A delta flip, another one to look for, where we've had this extreme move from one delta to the next. Right? Another one to look for. So lots of resources here. Okay, let me wrap it up there, and with that, we'll be back for a little more application, and then some of you have already started working with the Footprint Auto Trader, so you can automate much of this to your liking. Okay, guys, with that, I'll wrap it here, and we'll be back on the next one.